In this video, I'm going to go over how to write the equation of a line in point-slope form. In previous videos, we've gone over how to write something in slope-intercept form and how to write something in standard form. In many ways, point-slope form is easier than these others. Let's look at some things that are the same. In this equation right here, we've got one thing that we're familiar with. M represents the slope. So whatever the slope of this line is, we're going to put it right here. Now, for slope-intercept form, the thing about it is we have to have the y-intercept. That's the point we have to use, and we have to put it right here. For point-slope form, I can use any point on this line. Any point on this line would go right here. The x-coordinate would go right here, and the y-coordinate would go right here. So something in slope-intercept form would be y is equal to -1/2 x plus 3. My slope would be -1/2 and my y-intercept would be 3. For point-slope form, I don't have to have the y-intercept. I need any point and I want to put those coordinates right here. Now the thing about this formula is this minus sign means the opposite of what they give me. So if they gave me a slope of 1/2 and this point right here, here's how I would use this formula, given this information, to write this. I would go y, because this is a y sub 1. This is where you put the y coordinate for this point. And what's the y coordinate for this point? -2. That -2 put in this formula, a negative and negative is going to make a positive, is equal to, I'm going to put the slope right here. That would be 1/2. I make parentheses, x, and then the opposite. That's what this is where the x coordinate for this point goes. The x coordinate is 1. I plug it in there, it becomes a -1. So that's an example of taking information and plugging it in here and writing something in point-slope form. So let's look at some more examples. Example 1. Example 1, they want us to write this equation right here in point-slope form using this information. Well, if I look back at my formula says y minus y sub 1 is equal to the slope, and inside there is where I put my x coordinate. So let's rewrite that formula. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. So one thing I have to do is take this information and plug it into this formula, and I'll have the equation of the line in point-slope form. Y, I'm going to take my y-coordinate, which is 10, plug it in there, and change the sign. Minus 10 is equal to, m represents the slope. The slope is -1/6. -1/6, make a parentheses, x, and then I'm going to take the opposite of my x-coordinate, plug it in there. That is now in point-slope form. So let's try another one. They want us to take this information in example 2, write it in point-slope form. So again, the formula is y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. And I simply take this information and plug it in there. This is y, because I need a y in the equation. I need the opposite of my y coordinate. The opposite of -5 is +5. Is equal to, what's my slope? My slope is -10. It goes in this spot right here. Parentheses, times, and what's the opposite of my x-coordinate? -6. This equation is now in point-slope form. Now when you're doing this on IXL, at the very beginning they're going to give you boxes to kind of ease you into this, and they're not going to have you change the sign. Notice there's already negative signs in here. What they're trying to do is make it really easy for you. You just simply plug those numbers in there. So don't let those first problems, which are the easy problems, throw you off. You're going to put your y-coordinate right there. You're going to take whatever the y-coordinate is and put it right there. Now normally we would go a negative times a negative is a positive, but they're just wanting you to put that y coordinate in that box. In this box right here, they're wanting you to put the slope. So I'm going to put the slope in that box, and I'm going to put the x coordinate in this box. So normally we would change the signs on this, but on those first problems in IXL, they just want you to take those numbers and put them in the right spot. In example number 4, they don't give you the slope. You have to figure out what the slope is. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out what the slope is. So we have to remember what the slope formula. The slope formula tells me to take my y's and subtract them, put it in the top of a fraction, take my x's, subtract them, put it in the bottom of the fraction. So what we're going to do is when they don't give us the slope, but they give us 2 points, we have the ability to figure out what the slope is. I take my y's and I subtract them. That's 1 minus 9. 1 minus 9. I'm going to take my x's and subtract them. 8 minus 9. 8 minus 9. 1 minus 9, negative 8. 8 minus 9, negative 1. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. Now, my point slope form looks like this. Formula looks like this. Another thing that confuses students, I'm given 2 points. It doesn't matter which one of these points you use, you'll still get the right answer because you can use either one of them. So I'm just going to use the first one every single time. Y, and then this means the opposite of this y right here, negative 1 is equal to, I did this work to figure out what the slope is. The slope goes right there, parentheses, and then the opposite of this first one. Remember, if you pick a point, you have to use the x and the y. You can't switch the x's and the y's around. If I decide to use this point, I need to use the x and the y for this point. I've used the y, now I need to use the x, and I need to write the opposite of that number. This is this equation in point slope form. Now this is easily changed into slope intercept form. This is easily changed into standard form. Let's do one more like that. Here's another example of where they did not give me the slope, but I need to figure out what the slope is. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the slope formula, and I'm going to figure out what the slope is. Remember, the slope formula tells me to take my y's and subtract them, put it in the top of the fraction, take my x's and subtract them, put it in the bottom of the fraction. My first y is negative 2, and the opposite of my next y is positive 3. My first x is negative 10, and the opposite of my next x is positive 4. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Negative 10 plus 6 is negative 6. My slope is negative 1/6. Remember to put that sign right there in the front. Only one of those numbers is negative. Now that I've got my slope, I can easily use the point slope formula to figure out what it is in point slope form. Remember, I need to use just one of these points. I'm just always going to use that first one because it doesn't matter which one we use. Y, the opposite of this first y, is positive 2. I did all this work to figure out what the slope is. The slope is negative 1/6. And then the opposite of my first x, and I now have this in point slope form.